Hey everybody, it's Jason. I wanted to stop in for a second and talk about all the news that are coming out of London right now, about Star Wars Celebration, all about all the new Star Wars projects coming out, and kind of maybe give my take on what we're seeing because I am absolutely excited about a whole bunch of stuff that's coming out right now. And as you guys know, I think a lot of us just absolutely love Star Wars, so I just want to jump in and kind of maybe give my spin on a few different things. Um, First and foremost, like what we're seeing right now is that all the new Star Wars films are going to be, and projects are going to be covering the entirety of the Star Wars continuum, if you will. So they announced earlier today out of London that the whole slate of films and projects coming out are going to be coming from a series of eras that the current Lucasfilm regime is called Dawn of the Jedi, the Old Republic, the High Republic, the Fall of the Jedi, Reign of the Empire, Age of the Rebellion, The New Republic, Rise of the First Order, and then, of course, there's going to be another film that we're going to talk about taking place beyond, I would assume, Rise of the First Order, starring Daisy Ridley, with the new films taking place after The Last Skywalker, Rise of Skywalker. So let's talk a little bit about the films, the three films that we know have been announced. Hopefully that we'll see all three come to fruition. We've seen in the past maybe some films get announced and then they don't happen and things like that for a lot of different reasons, and that could certainly be the case here. But I'm really excited actually about the very first one we're going to talk about, which is James Mangold taking on this film called Dawn of the Jedi, which goes back to the very first Jedi. They are announcing it right now as this biblical epic. And of course, this makes like so much sense in so many different ways for a couple different reasons, right? First and foremost, we have, I think, for a lot of the Star Wars universe, a lot of the Star Wars fandom, been begging to move beyond the Skywalker story. And it's not that we don't love Skywalker. We do, right? But we've had 9 films that have largely centered on the Anakin, Luke, and I guess Rey continuum of Star Wars. And it's a big damn galaxy. And in fact, not only is it a big damn galaxy, we've been asking for this stuff and we're receiving stories about Star Wars for years and years and years through other mediums. Either it's role-playing games or video games or books or things like that. People want to explore the idea of Star Wars beyond this. And the whole biblical aspect of this is so smart because now we get a chance to go back and completely spend time talking about Star Wars in a way that is removed from the Skywalker family line, removed from Tatooine, see new places that maybe we haven't had a chance to see before. And of course, Star Wars has always been very heavily vested in this religious idea. Jedi themselves are these warrior monks. So I'm really excited to see, especially with a guy like Mangold, who I think is really talented. I think he's really the right guy to do this story. It'll be interesting to see how this varies from, say, established stories in like the Legends chronology and exactly how far back in time they go and what happens and how we see like the development of the Jedi. So, and who will stand in opposite the Jedi, because obviously we're going to have some kind of conflict set up. So I'm excited about this idea. I think Mangold is the perfect guy. And of course, now, when you set this thousands of years earlier than the existing Star Wars continuum, you can play with new ideas, new developmental storylines, create new characters, and of course, hopefully have the opportunity to really deliver something that the fans really love. And of course, one of the other things is like now you can start to retcon in moving forward maybe some of the other people, because I think one of the things people have been asking for are adaptations of the Knights of the Old Republic series, the video games, and so forth. And there's a big guy out there everyone's kind of waiting for, which is Revan. This series would presumably take place well before the Revan era happens. But if we're gonna get a pre Star Wars, maybe eventually we'll get Revan as well. So that to me is really, really exciting. We also see that Dave Filoni, who people absolutely love, a lot of people absolutely love, for like kind of shepherding the current era of Star Wars that we see on Disney Plus right now with the Mandalorian series and some of these other stuff. He's going to direct a film that kind of ties in Mandalorian, ties in Ahsoka, ties in all of this other stuff, Book of Boba Fett, and then they're saying this is going to be this grand action feature. And this is actually going to tie into the Ahsoka thing I'm going to talk about in a moment, which a more of the three films that I'm going to talk about right now, I am actually the least excited about this. I'm a little bit more cautious. I'm just really worried about how you're going to try to hambone everybody into this particular thing. And this is what I'm talking about. These current Star Wars series that we're in right now, when we're talking about Mandalorian or Ahsoka or the Rebels or Clone Wars, things like that, they're all taking place post Return of the Jedi. And that means it's taking place pre-sequel trilogy. One of the big things that Star Wars has been trying desperately to do is to work back in the Heir to the Empire trilogy, the Thrawn trilogy, if you will, into what is now canon. And for those of you who are unaware of who Grand Admiral Thrawn is, or the Heir to the Empire trilogy, or anything like that, it really, those books, actually maintain a very important place in Star Wars chronology and also in the fandom. Because what happens is, post Return of the Jedi, post 1983, Star Wars really loses a lot of steam. They're not selling a lot of books. They're not selling a lot of toys. By, say, 1989, the franchise really kind of feels stale, in a lot of ways dead in the water. Lucas has said he's not going to make any more movies or anything like that. We're not seeing anything else. So as a 12-year-old boy, there's no new Star Wars. All I've got is my old stuff. And then Timothy Zahn comes along and writes this amazing trilogy that, in my mind, completely resurrects Star Wars. He writes these three books, Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and Last Command. And essentially, without spoiling anything for you, what they do is they take place about 5 years after Return of the Jedi, featuring the rise of this new villain in Star Wars. In a lot of ways, I would argue he's the single best villain we've ever had. His name is Grand Admiral Thrawn. He's a member of the Chiss species. He's blue. He's got this blue skin with these red eyes, and he's impossibly intelligent. In a lot of ways, a much better foil to Luke, Han, and Leia and the New Republic than really even the Emperor ever was. He's just a smarter, more calculating guy. He's colder in a lot of ways. The way that he manipulates things, the way that Zahn writes him, and the reception to these books as they come out in the early 90s is amazing. You can kind of hear John Williams' soundtrack playing in the back of your head. And as a result of those books, you start to see a new reinvigoration of Star Wars. People start to get excited again. You see a new toy line coming out in, I think, 95. Lucas starts to play around again. We see the re-release of Star Wars, the special editions in 97, and of course we start getting the prequels in 99. But I don't think any of that happens without Timothy Zahn and this impossibly perfect character he's created in Grand Admiral Thrawn. And there are other amazing characters: Mara Jade, Talon Card. We see the eventual. After these books come out, there's a whole slide of other books, and we start to see the eventual rise of the children of Han and Leia, of Luke and Mara Jade, and where this Star Wars stories goes. Now, eventually, those all kind of get retconned and put into the Legends timeline, which really upset a lot of the Star Wars fandom, because I think we were all waiting for a film series of that. So to kind of make the Star Wars fans happy, they've tried to work in Thrawn into these new series via cartoons and now the TV shows. And I would imagine eventually this will culminate in a Thrawn as bad guy film where everyone's got to kind of rise up to defeat Thrawn. So I don't know how they're going to do it. Of course, I'm going to be cautiously optimistic. I'm excited. And about the Ahsoka trailer, which I was just messaging a friend of mine, I think I've watched about 45 times now this morning. That I'm absolutely excited about. I think Rosario Dawson's perfect casting for this character. And we do see, briefly, Grand Admiral Thrawn, but we don't see who's playing him. I've had my hopes out for years. I've always thought that Benedict Cumberbatch would be the perfect person to play Grand Admiral Thrawn. Either he or Jason Isaacs, I think, would also be amazing. So I don't know exactly who we're going to see as Thrawn, but I'm excited for that series to take place and see where we're going to go. You know, when Ahsoka's character first came out, in the Clone Wars series. You know, it's been one of these really interesting turnabouts because she went from this kind of little kid who was following Anakin around, and the fandom was kind of iffy on her, to where she's become one of the most beloved characters in all of Star Wars, and I love what they're doing with her story. So, let's see where that goes. Again, that's the one where I'm kind of cautiously up. I'm not cautiously optimistic. I saw her fire up those twin lightsabers. Then we saw Rafe Stevenson, and opposite her, and he looks amazing as some kind of Star Wars villain. This guy he's going to be playing, I'm not familiar with him at all, but he's got that gravelly voice. He just looks the part. There's sometimes when they cast Star Wars and they nail it, and they absolutely did. With his role. We'll see what this series looks like, but there was this great line towards the end of the trailer, if you haven't had a chance to see it yet, where it's like, you know, perhaps it's time to start again. And that's just, boy, does that ever hit the head, you know, hit the nail right on the head. Finally, I want to talk about this other film that's going to be featuring the return of Daisy Ridley as Rey Skywalker. Directed by Charmaine, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing the name right, Obaid Chinoy, right? I'm not familiar with her work. Apparently she's directed some stuff like Miss Marvel and Saving Face. I'm not familiar with that stuff, but or I haven't watched it. But I'm excited actually for Daisy Ridley. I don't know how if I can summon a whole lot of excitement for post sequel trilogy. I've gone on record. I just hate the sequel trilogy for so many reasons, but not because of Daisy Ridley, not because of John Boyega, not because of the cast of the films. Actually, I feel like the films in a lot of ways were cast really well. I feel like the characters deserved better stories than they got. I feel like we as Star Wars fandom deserved better stories than what we got, because what we ended up getting was this hot mess of 3 films that hit and missed in a lot of different ways. They were just so uneven. There was no clear direction. There was a pandering to the audience, a dumbing down of Star Wars. And in fact, one of the great things about Star Wars that I think appealed to me not only as a person, but as an adult, and I've talked about this elsewhere, was this trust in the audience that there was this other history that we don't know. And of this fallen republic, these Jedi, all of these different things, and it just became too generic. I can go into this a little bit later on. I just feel like the sequels, try as they may, didn't deliver. And I think I know people are going to talk about Last Jedi. Some people love it, some people hate it. Look, it's like mayonnaise. Some of you guys like it on your sandwiches. I feel like it great. I just feel like we deserved better. So we get this new film with Rey picking up 15 years after the First Order is defeated. First Order is stupid. How do we have the First Order, then there's the Resistance? I never understood it. It never made any sense. It was never plotted out. If you had gone with a guy like Timothy Zahn, who had really plotted out what Star Wars would look like, how the Empire was still dangerous even after the fall of the Emperor and Darth Vader, and there was still this giant, imperial regime, this machine out there that could still overwhelm a fledgling republic, you would have had a much better series. But the naming, no, it's just bad. Even the Stormtroopers looked awful. But we're going to get it. So what can we hope for? Well, I'm hoping that Daisy Ridley finally gets the film she deserves, because I thought she was excellent. I loved her character, Rey, in Star Wars, in the sequel trilogy. When I talk about the high points of the sequel trilogy, I think Rey is actually one of them. I think she's absolutely terrific. So what will happen? It'll be interesting to see how they rebuild. Do you kind of go in some ways like what Kevin J. Anderson wrote in the Star Wars books in the Jedi Academy series, which came out after the Thrawn trilogy, where Luke was running around trying to find all these remnants and these Force-sensitive people and these Jedi survivors. It's a big damn galaxy. Certainly some of them are going to be out there, right? So is Rey going to be doing that? Is she going to be running around the galaxy? Is she going to be in the Millennium Falcon? Because that's Chewbacca's ship. I don't care. That's Chewbacca's ship. But aside from that, will she be in love? Will she be a parent? Will we revisit the idea of attachments for Jedi. You know, one of my favorite lines in Jedi, actually in Star Wars fandom, is actually the idea of Ulic Qel-Droma and Nomi Sunrider. Back in the Tales of the Jedi series, if you've ever read any of those comics, they were beautiful. Nomi was the widow of another Jedi, falls in love with this other guy. Ulic Qel-Droma has one of the great ascension and falls in all of Star Wars series. I'm dying for a series on that. He's still my favorite Star Wars character, he and Obi-Wan. So, will we revisit that? Who's going to be the foil to Rey? Will we ever get rid of this dumb rule of two? For those of you who aren't familiar, there's the idea started by Darth Bane that there could only be a master and apprentice. There couldn't be multiple Sith. I've never liked it. I've always felt like it kept the Sith from being even a better villain to the Jedi. So I'm hopeful. Like I'm hoping that this will be the opportunity to maybe do post Skywalker stuff, post Return of the Jedi stuff even better. But again, my concern overall is, unlike what we're getting with James Mangold, Dawn of the Jedi, here we are, set ourselves back in the Skywalker stories. Again, it's a big damn galaxy. You've got an infinite timeline. Let's go find something else. Now, one of the things I'm actually excited about is actually this Skeleton Crew series, right? Which is apparently going to follow Jude Law and a bunch of kids banging around the galaxy. I don't know much about it, but these are the kinds of stories that I think interest me. Is like, you can take the idea of Star Wars, and this is one of the things that I think Andor did so well. We know how intertwined the character of Andor is to what happens with the Death Star and all that, but they expose this Star Wars galaxy that was, separated from Luke, Leia, the Force, Yoda, Jedi, lightsabers. It was just other things going on. Let's see what stories you can create. Hell, one day I would love to see like a romantic comedy set in the Star Wars universe. What does a mob movie look like in the Star Wars universe? Like, these are the things that I'm kind of curious to see here. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens with it. There's also this series called The Acolyte. Okay, sure. I'm down on that. The other thing I want to talk to you guys about real quick was actually the other trailer that we saw for Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny. And as excited as I was to watch the Ahsoka trailer and see the Mangold stuff, and I'm a Star Wars guy first and foremost. It's always going to be first in my heart, but Indiana Jones is right there, number 2. This film looks like maybe the concluding Indiana Jones we've asked for. Crystal Skull itself was a real miss as well. It seemed like Lucasfilm, between the sequel trilogy and Crystal Skull, were just in a real rut. And this new film, the way it's being portrayed, what we're seeing, if you haven't had a chance to go watch the trailer, please absolutely go do so. The music, I can't tell you how excited I am about Phoebe Waller-Bridge playing Indiana Jones's goddaughter. I feel like the tone of this film captures what Indiana Jones always was, say at least in the first 3 films, that Crystal Skull missed out on. I feel like she is a much better, I don't want to say sidekick. There's the idea that maybe they're handing off the Indiana Jones series to her instead of Shia LaBeouf's mutt, his son. It just captures it right. And I look at Mads Mikkelsen, who looks like the perfect Indiana Jones bad guy. We start to see, maybe it offers us the opportunity to one last time say goodbye to Indiana Jones, and some of the other characters that we've seen. Hear the music one last time. They're playing with these ideas of time. Looks like maybe time travel almost, or redoing time. As an archaeologist, boy, does that ever make a lot of sense. Certainly as a lot of it, as a historian as well. I'm really excited about this movie. I can't tell you how excited I am to see Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny because it feels right. The movie feels right. So hopefully it's good. So those are a couple quick thoughts on Star Wars, on Indiana Jones. If you're listening here, I'd love to hear your thoughts on where you think Star Wars is going to go, where you think Indiana Jones is going to go. Right now, where I want to go is to the store and buy a whole bunch of Star Wars toys and put them up here in my office, because why not? I am so fired up. Please, Hasbro, I want a Fondor Hallcraft. You cannot give that to me in Andor and not let me have that. I need that on my shelf somehow, some way. So, anyway, hey, everybody, thanks for listening. Keep tuning in, and may the Force be with you. Talk to you later. Bye.